Hey, you're on.
Good evening, it is October the 26th. This is a meeting of the Untitled Budget Committee. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here. Any public input this evening? None forthcoming. Then we'll move on to the approval of the October 5th minutes. Nothing jumped out at me, but then again, it's only me.
All right, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 5th meeting.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second that.
Those in favor, moved and seconded. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
I was abstaining. Okay. Chairman's comments. We have two additional things we're going to be dealing with this evening that Jane has left for us. One will be the building inspection and the insurance. And we'll put those out at the end of the meeting. First thing we're going to deal with this evening is going to be emergency management, which we put off at the last meeting because we wanted Adam to be here. Jane and I had a brief discussion and decided that rather than drag Adam over here multiple times, we could do this at the same time as we deal with the fire department. So, with that in mind, we're going to move on to our first line item, which is 4152, revaluation property. This is for my information. Why do we have two different companies here? We have RB Wood and Sanssouci.
Sanssouci does the utilities,
Oh, okay.
so
Well, thank you. It's just.
the other guy does all the normal property. And we just signed a contract with Wood,
Yep.
and this is the first year of the 5-year contract. And it looks to be, I forgot, I think it's around 4% or 3% per annum increase. We'll see that next year.
Well, they've already started sending out their cards saying they're going to do us again.
Yeah,
I got mine in the mail.
death and taxes.
Any other further questions for Chip on this one?
In 2019, that's because they reassessed the entire town, the figures were way up to 85,000. And what do you,
In 2019, we had a significant action brought by the utilities as well, so the Sanssouci bill was a little higher. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
yeah, and what, just what do they do in the years when there's not, that they just check the tax cards?
Yeah, every property transaction, every change of use, something going in or out of current use. Every year we have requests for abatements that have to go through the whole thing.
Well, plus they're doing a portion of the town every year too, correct?
Right.
How many hours do they, when you figure that they, is there any way of acknowledging how?
Well, I know that he's here 2 days a week. I don't know if he's here all day, both of those days.
What I'm getting at is this, they can do multiple towns, right?
Yeah,
And they probably do know.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I mean, $46,000 isn't enough money to.
No, I was gonna say,
So we have a motion?
Make a motion on budget 014152 that we agree to the selectmen's recommendation for 2022.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on this one? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Moving on to 4195, cemeteries. Are you here to speak to the cemeteries?
If necessary.
Okay. Well, normally Susie would always come in the past. I know you were sitting in for her tonight.
I am.
I had a couple of questions. Do we have a sexton?
No.
Okay, so that explains why we didn't spend any money.
Yes.
Okay. Are we going to have a sexton? Or is that a position that's still out there?
Will COVID ever go away?
Well, thank you. Okay.
We hope to.
Okay, the plan is then to still employ a sexton,
Yes.
so that line item is justified.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We did considerably less cemetery restoration so far this year, or is that stuff that has not been billed yet?
Some has not been built. We have a bunch of our really old ones. For example, Chris Sawyer, who doesn't happen to be here tonight, has one in her backyard, requires crane work. We've been in contact with some companies about getting it done. Apparently they're reluctant to call us back. We also have some hydro seeding we'd like to get done in the townhouse cemetery. We did have one fellow at least answer the phone, and we're hoping that we can, if, at a bare minimum, have signed contracts in place by the end of the year so that we can encumber the funds. If not, we'll have no choice but to give it back and try again next year. So we kept a flat budget, and hoping for the best and expecting the worst.
so that phase into 12,000, you're gonna spend more this year? You
We
think?
intend to spend all of it,
You intend to spend all?
yes.
Are you gonna be able to?
Again, I just addressed that, possibly.
Okay.
Well, the metal budget is a metal budget.
I'll make a motion. I move we approve cemeteries 4195 in the amount of $29,961.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this?
Excuse me.
None forthcoming? Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Hey, guy. Give this to Chip, please. He looks lost over there.
The next line on the court is highway. Is Jimmy going to be here tonight?
I thought he was, but he may or may not be. This is a camera shot. I think I can walk us through most of it.
Well, we've got 1, 2, 3 ahead of us that would require, maybe some questions from the department head to explain their budgets, and none of them are here yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over to 4196, which will be the last one, which is insurance. Of course, workers' compensation is payroll driven. Is the property and casualty reflecting our increases in building value
Right.
because of the library?
Sort of the values went up, so our property and casualty went up. The workers' comp claims ratio, and we were in a group, went down, so that actually went down by $1,100. But the driving force on it is the property. It's, as you say, it's the library. It's worth a little more money.
How's the policy deductible work, Chip? $2,000 thing, only 1,000 been expended.
The thought, okay, and I'm not certain why she printed it this way, but the second line that you're reading there, 2021 line, is the expended amount. So we may have more than one occasion to use the deductible. It's not like an accumulated thing. Last year, or in 2021, this year, we used $1,000 of it. I think in the, yeah,
Are these single deductibles? Is that, or is this a collection of deductibles? I mean, is that basic deductible $1,000?
right.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so she's, I heard you say she, I don't know what it is, but, so basically
Could be
you're
anybody.
putting in one deductible?
Well, we're putting in two.
Two, okay.
That's what we've done.
Yes.
Um,
And,
We did it in 2022, or 2021,
yeah.
so this current year has 2,000. But 2020 had 1,000. And it didn't seem to,
Was there no deductible before that, Chip? 1918?
no, we always had a deductible, we just took it out of something else. So,
I make a motion that we approve 4196 for 78,050 for the upcoming year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Very well, then all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Well, a little bit of, should we move on with, you want to talk these other issues? Or
Sure.
Okay, then
I
fine.
mean, I think Jack's is an easy budget to do.
Why don't we do that on an off chance that the road agent might show up that.
So this is building inspection 4240.
For the record, by the way, the selectmen have instituted a 4.6% cost of living adjustment for the coming year. 4.6%, which is now going to be reflected in all of our salary line items.
And I think this is the first salary we'll be dealing with. So this reflects a 4.6% salary increase. There was no step increase for,
He went up a step too.
did he go up a step? No, I think that's just an illustration of his grade.
I was always accusing Jack of, as his salary went up, he was getting bigger and bigger.
He's getting thinner and thinner.
No, I couldn't believe it. I said, holy smokes, Jack, what happened to you?
How swing is he? I haven't seen him in a while.
He's 60 pounds?
Good for him.
Oh, yeah, he was always real thin. I couldn't believe it. Oh, Jesus.
So other than the salary, all the line items are a flat budget.
Everything's the same, isn't
Yeah. His meetings and education generally happen at the end of the year, so that expense will come out. And the dues are due by December, so that expense will go up. I don't know that it'll go to $600, but it's going up. And although we didn't do as much vehicle maintenance as we thought we would, We will be doing a little more vehicle maintenance this year, and then I believe he's gonna need a set of tires next year.
As an aside, are we comfortable with all the fuel numbers you fellows have talked about in in your deliberations of selectmen? Because not knowing where it's gonna go.
Right, well, that's come up in every budget, the fire, the road agent, the code officer. And we have fuel contracts with, but that's heating. And off-road equipment, we have a fuel contract on that. But they feel confident that that's gonna be a good number. I mean, right now, he's underspent by $200 on his fuel budget, so even at the current rate of travel, he's gonna be under. So there is an increase. And we've had fuel's been a little more expensive for half of the year. They'll be walking if they run out of money.
Maybe we do horse and buggy.
So most of the remaining salaries are gonna see this 4.6%.
All of them. Yeah. Although we have requested that unless someone has achieved a higher capability, that we're not doing any steps.
Yeah.
So the fire chief has got a couple of folks that went from firefighter to EMT, so he felt accommodate that. But we knew this was coming.
And the 4.6 is a state established figure, or?
It's it's established, it's a
Regional?
Bureau of Labor Northeast Region. So Social Security was at 5.9, I think. But I think it had other elements.
5.9 Medicare,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I
It goes-
mean, there are other
It just goes from
considerations.
one pocket into the other one.
There are other considerations with Social Security than there are with workers. So
Yeah.
We're up with 4.6.
Okay. Times are living.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve line item 4240 in the amount of $72,217.
Okay, that's moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? None forthcoming. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're going to move on with the department heads or without the department heads, but I would appreciate the future to make sure that these folks know that this is part of their job description to go and explain their budgets to us. Okay, so we're going to move on to highway. I have been approached by a couple of different citizens asking about how our billing is done by the highway department. When the selectmen are presented a bill, are you presented in the manner that's saying, you know, solid road, graded, or Tuftsboro Neck Road, graded, or whatever? I mean, what level of detail are you getting from the road agent in order to pay the bills?
Well, we're getting a pretty pretty clear level of detail. The problem that we've noticed or become aware of is that it's broken apart between labor and then materials and rented equipment. And what we're trying to put together, and we gave him an example, or I gave him an example of what a spreadsheet might look like that would combine those two, so we get a real figure for.
So in other words, is there an established rate that this is the rate for a six-wheel dump, this is the rate for a grader, so on and so forth?
Right.
Grader for 4 hours, operator for 4 hours, whatever.
Right, although currently what he's doing on billing with equipment that the town doesn't own is a unit and operator combined hourly rate. The hourly rate for labor hasn't changed for 6 years, I think it is. So we're not getting that level of detail as far as what's the cost of the equipment, what's the cost of the operator. The explanation that we gave him at our meeting this week, or last week, excuse me, was that in the event that we needed, or decided that we needed to buy some equipment, we need to know how many hours the equipment works, what's the cost of rental versus owner owning it. The same thing is true with the plowing. I mean, basically, we just have the 10-wheel plow truck, and we're renting 1 tons. So we need to have a little better handle on
So
those costs. As far as
it begs the question, are you satisfied with the accountability of the billing? Or would you like to see an improvement in selectmen?
no, we're not. I don't think we're satisfied. I think we're definitely looking at creating a better accounting on it. I mean, you can notice through the budgeting process the trend. Obviously, there's more work that's being done, but it still boils down to if you wanted to go out and find out what's the average per mile cost of maintaining roads in Antrim or Holderness or what, another town that's sitting out here in the country. Are you able to do that? Can you do it here? And I don't think you really can. You can take the number of miles and divide it by the budget that we currently have for the road agent. I'm not sure that's giving you a clear indication of what our costs are and how we're managing our costs.
So when we're renting equipment, does Jimmy own the equipment?
Some of it.
Renting? Most of it?
Some of it.
All, not all.
But we're, I've checked on market rate on that, so he's not gouging us. Actually, I think he's undercharging.
I wouldn't accuse him of gouging, but
Yeah.
maybe sometimes he has a piece of equipment that he can keep busy, that it needs to be busy sometimes, you know? I mean, for example,
Yeah, I suppose.
I see him on Phineas Graves or sometimes some odd times of the year.
And sometimes it's easier to do a job with a different piece of equipment than to muddle through with what you have on hand. But I think he's thoughtful about his approach. I mean, we've taken over a couple more miles of road. We have a bunch of work to do over on, what's the name of that road?
You searching for Willand?
Willand Road, thank you. So
I-
that's going to be reflected in his costs, but a significant amount of that, $50,000 or closer to $70,000, that's getting paid, so that's coming in on the revenue side.
I just say, because I've had this witness, people ask me, why are they doing this, why are they doing that, and, what's going on?
They should come and ask us as opposed to asking
Yeah,
them.
and would the town be better off buying some equipment? Is that,
Well,
is
and
that
that's,
to go eventually?
well, I don't know that we're in a position of answering that question until we know exactly what
Yeah.
equipment needs there are.
Yeah.
And the way it's being currently built in, I mean, technically, he's an elected official. He could send us he could put a budget item of $600,000+, and we just cut a check,
Yeah.
and that'd be the end of it. But it's sort of a strange, I mean, we pay the bills, like we pay for the materials as the bills come in. We pay his labor bills when he submits them. So it's a hybridized system. And we've talked about, over the years, we've talked about a highway department, but not that I'm particularly anti-union, but we're under the threshold of having a union shop for the whole town. You add 4 or 5 more employees and you're over the threshold now, which would bring another element of negotiation into the mix and maybe take the power of the budget committee or the selectmen out. So there are trade-offs.
The lesser of two evils and trying to weigh it.
Yeah, and I'm not sure the highway department's any more efficient than a road agent. Really.
So when Jim has to rent a piece of equipment and an operator, he gets a bill. Do
Right.
we see that bill?
We do. Actually,
And that's-
that bill gets submitted to us,
Okay, good.
and we pay the bill.
And we pay the bill.
Yeah.
And that's just a pass-through cost, isn't it?
Right.
It gets
It doesn't mark it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Same with the paving, for instance. It's
Right.
just whatever the cost is.
Yeah, okay.
Chip, does the town employ any of the cost calculators that are on a national basis that, like Marshall and Swift and some, you can do construction costs, building costs, things like that, labor costs, et cetera. Are they useful at all, or are they just too complicated?
Well, it's not so much that they're too complicated, as that they're generally targeted at a larger metropolitan
Yeah,
area.
sure, you're
or
right.
targeted. For instance, we can't use the state paving costs because
Right.
we don't buy that much. We buy a lot of paving, but we don't buy
Yeah.
as much as the
Right.
state does. And we're also, our labor costs are based upon local market as
Mhm.
opposed to,
As the national, a regional market, or,
yeah, what's a dump truck driver get out there in the world.
yeah, I can understand that. We did it in,
We do, however, compare our costs to other town costs,
Yes,
similarly situated towns. And that's why we want to get a little more granular on the way we do our accounting. So that, because, I mean, you mix into this batch the fact that we had a paving study done, we had a culvert study done. So we're adding work that should have been done over the course of time, but has accumulated over the course of years that it wasn't done. So that sort of throws a wrench into
yeah.
your calculation of averages if you're looking at other towns. I mean, I'm sure other towns put work off from time to time, but it's hard to get
Balance.
it's hard to get a really clear number on where we stand. And we're not, even using the figures that we currently have, we're not way out in left field about it.
Yeah.
And actually, I think adding our intention is to add a second warrant article for neighborhood road paving, because we're just not getting to them. And, we're not gonna get to Shirley Way or some of the other neighborhood roads that aren't through roads. I mean, we spent an awful lot of time and energy over the past years
Right.
just on Ledge Hill, Dane, Solomon, the through roads, Indian Ward. And so the neighborhood roads sort of get pushed off to the side, we'll get to them someday. And the someday just never seems to arrive, so we're gonna try to break those two pieces apart. The other part of that is the paving companies that we use like do, a mile or 2 or 3 miles right in a stretch. Neighborhood roads is a whole different animal, so we can start looking at bidding out those paving projects to smaller companies that don't need to do a 3-mile stretch of.
Thank you.
Just add one small question also. So when Jim has to rent a piece of equipment, but he uses one of his people, so we're billed for that person, say like on an hourly basis, is that how it
Right.
works? Okay. And if it's a particular person, person A, and one week he's driving a grader.
No, okay, I know where you're going.
Okay, so
He
does that?
gets the same pay rate every
Okay,
day,
okay.
regardless of what.
Just by-
I mean, that's where the billing reads. I don't know if Jim does something different.
I see.
But the billing reads that these employees are all making X number of dollars an hour.
Okay.
Whether he's driving a grader or he's driving a shovel.
Looking at this year's budget, obviously we had to forego doing some things in order to accomplish other things.
Right.
Apron paving obviously did not get done. Crack sealing obviously
We're
did not
hoping
get
some
done.
apron
Should
paving
have
does
been.
get done, but, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
There is some apron paving that's gonna happen.
Okay.
Is the road agent also plus 4.6%?
He doesn't get to do that.
Gotcha.
He gets to submit a budget.
Okay.
So if he wants to increase the cost, then it will be reflected in his lines.
Okay.
And his salary, if you look at the first line, is the same as it was in 2020.
Yeah, good. Well, I think for that particular department, this isn't a pet budget, given what we're going to be faced with this year for fuel costs and
Mhm.
unknowns and weather and all that business.
Yeah,
Seems
I
like a
mean,
modest increase to me.
if you want to run through the lines, you've got a $10,000 increase on winter maintenance. Excuse me again. 10,000 on tree removal. And that's driven to a large degree by the ash borer, which is really costing us some money. And I don't know if you look on the sides of the roads, but there's a lot of ash trees
The Union Wharf.
that are dying and or dead. And they don't stand up like an oak tree forever, they just come down in little pieces. The road striping is up because our intention is to do a little more road striping, including some stop lines up at junction with 171 on Ledge Hill. And a couple of the road, we had one, one road that didn't get striped this past year that needs to get done. The spring maintenance and fall maintenance are both up $3,000. And those are the biggest changes. It's a total budget change of about $21,000.
And how old is that truck now?
It's gonna be a warrant article next year.
Next year.
Yeah. And our hopes is to get that out for bid pretty early, get some prices pretty early.
Chip on the line, road prep and repair.
Yep.
Is this on this page, is the 2021 budget $1,000 and nothing gets spent?
Right.
They're asking for 25,000 this year and you requested 100?
Right, we're just being jerks. No, what we're doing, the road prep and repair line started to become slush fund, if you will. And to get it a little more back in line, we're putting that into the warrant article. So if it's not just going to be paving, it's going to be paving in preparation for paving.
Okay, all compliment, so it's included with the paving.
Right, right. I mean, I don't have the historical numbers, do I? Maybe I do. Yeah. It's nowhere to be found. I think we agreed as a board that road prep and repair was a bad idea. So we stopped it. Although the road agent had plugged $25,000 in there. He backed it off and told me that we're working into the warrant article. So that's,
Okay, I make a motion that on budget 4312 in the amount of $655,800, that this budget be approved by our committee.
Moved, we have a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anybody have any further questions for Chip on this one?
And just to be clear, we made it very clear to the road agent that if he wanted to defend the amount of money that he submitted, he could come and defend that. And there have been occasions when you've said, he's right and we're wrong. And it's obvious that he didn't want to defend it.
No?
Just one more question. So the warrant for road prep and repair is likely to be about 25?
Yeah, depending on, it may be more than that.
Okay.
If you put road prep and repair also into the neighborhood road warrant article,
Yeah.
and we haven't looked at those pieces completely yet. We're still looking for cost on.
Further questions? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I do that just because I think Jimmy should be sitting here. Make some discussion instead of skip that.
As soon as you
That's
lose, Barry,
Beg your pardon?
as soon as you lose,
Yeah. So the counts. They want to close, right?
The last one is 4520, which is Parks and Rec. Once again, we don't have our director here, but
it's 4520.
this is essentially a double budget.
Was that it's 4520, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
4520, yeah.
I don't have it, so I'll borrow.
Yeah, I'm just sure. Is that actually not it?
No.
It's yours?
The only thing that appears to be new this year is a support staff for $2,000 for beach cleanup.
Right. And that includes 20 Mile Bay, the beach on 20 Mile Bay. We've had no luck in getting the state to step up for that. He's added a swim instructor, so we're gonna have 2 for swim lessons, so that budget went from 1,500 to 3,000. The support staff cleanup is not just the beach cleanup, but it's also work on the docks or the swim floats, and the lines. We're not certain what the bill from Wolfboro is going to be, so that remains.
Well, it hasn't changed in forever, has it?
No, we keep asking for some kind of justification for the number, and it's just too much of a question to ask. The toilet costs for the beach went up a little bit. The request for Old Home Days came in at 3,000. We budgeted 1,000 because there is a revolving Parks and Rec fund. So when he takes money in from events, they have to spend it on something. And our feeling was he could spend it on Old Home Days. And his request for $3,000 for concert details, banners and details, when we dissected the costs for hiring a police detail for the 8 concerts that he plans on having in 2022, it's accommodated with the $2,000 as opposed to $3,000. Any banners and advertising and whatnot they can take out of their revolving fund. He'd asked for $6,000 for recreational areas. We brought that down to 5. The major event maybe this year is that there's going to be a mountain bike trail built in Central Park, but that would end up being a warrant article was an expense involved in that. And beach and dock maintenance, he had come in at 7,500, and part of that 7,500 involved replacing hardware and different parts of the swim platforms and other fixed assets. And our feeling is that's not an annual expense, that's a capital expense. So he's going to create a list of what it is he thinks he needs, and we'll have a warrant article for that because it's a capital expense.
I mean, look at the department head request down quite a bit.
Yeah, well, we're being,
I mean, that's.
I mean, you gotta understand, this is
Pretty
the
big number right now.
first year we're going back to normal, where we got a 4.6% inflation rate. We're working in a pretty nice area of 0 to 1% or 2%. So knowing that, I think it's a little much of an ask to say, okay, and we're gonna increase the budget by 2%. Now you got, you know, 6%.
I think it's good to do that.
So that's the long and short of it on the budget. And we did, and his, although his salary looks as though it's just that is the 4.6 and he's got a second grade, we are asking for more hours from Dennis, so that expense is going up a bit. And he does a good job. I mean, he drives us crazy, but. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I didn't see it right on. Oh.
That's just, you know, whatever.
Right on this. That's right.
Wrote on this, transfer it over.
If you remember what you said.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve Parks and 4520 in the amount of $57,967.40.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
Moved in second. Do we have any further discussion? And forthcoming, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? And that takes care of our line items for this evening. Correspondence, nobody knows we're here, so nobody messes with the correspondence. Nothing this evening on that.
Is there any way that you can make these department heads show up to a meeting?
Well, that's,
To discuss this thing? I mean, this stuff should be important to them.
well, exactly, and I would urge the selectmen to, we will contact them. Jane can send them an email, but it really is part of the job, and I would be very disappointed if we start getting into certainly some of the bigger line items that we're dealing with so far without representation by the department heads.
I'm of two minds on that, having been a county commissioner as well as a selectman. And depending on the department head for information is not the clearest method. And it is actually the selectman presenting the budget. That said, I understand the value of having the department head here. Obviously, last meeting,
No, you are here to defend your budget. This is your budget, not theirs. This is your budget. But on the other hand, they're the ones with the technical expertise that should be able to answer some of the questions that we have. Because you can't micromanage everything, or if you could, you shouldn't be. That's why we have department heads.
I can barely micromanage myself.
Okay.
I second
So,
that.
we will be making a point to make sure that
Yeah,
department heads should be here.
and I'll second that we can, enlist Jane to notify everybody that there's a meeting.
Mhm.
Is it possible that
Fire and police should
weather
definitely,
tonight has
yeah.
held some people back?
Fire, police, library, solid waste, that's what money is. So,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then with that in mind, anything else on your, you want to remind
You
us on
should
ship?
have, I directed the selectman secretary to ship off the budgets that we worked on Monday. I don't know if you got them or not. but we did,
Not yet.
okay, we did fire, we did the library. It was just, I didn't want you to think that you'd want to vote on it tonight or get mad that we were only giving you a day to look at it. But I wanted you to get them as early as possible,
Mm-hmm.
especially the fire, because it's pretty extensive.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a little bit of looking at. Library came in pretty close to flat. Police came in, and I guess I have to take the blame for that problem, because I made an offhanded comment that, you know, with the pandemic and different issues, maybe we should be looking at another officer just to get coverage. And so I find myself staring at a budget with,
6, 5.
it was a good $70,000 increase
Yes.
year to year. So we had to walk our way through that. Then CIP happened last week. I don't know how you were there. And this notion of 2 cruisers in 1 year was another discussion that we were having. So the long and the short of it is we sent our chief of police back to rework his numbers. So that's not going to.
We'll have a couple of weeks to look them over as soon as you get them to us.
Yeah, and I think, when is our next meeting here?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, so hopefully, Chris had all his budget done for the transfer station, with the exception of wages.
Mm-hmm.
So he should have his done for us for this coming Monday, which would give you a week to look at that. So we should have, and any other small budgets that might be still kicking around. We should have those 2 budgets definitely for the next meeting. I'm hoping police, but it may be that fire, police, transfer station all in one go is too much of a.
That's an awful lot for one night.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're giving us a heads up on what we're going to be looking at.
Yeah,
Not
it's
a
a big
question.
lift for one night. We may want to just.
Well, we're in good shape. We've got plenty of time so far.
Yeah,
Could I ask you, is he putting on 1 additional police officer or 2?
not putting any on yet.
Oh, well, it is his wish.
No, it was 1.
1, it is 1?
No, I'm not going to say it is 1.
No, I'm,
His-
it's what
his
he's
request or
proposing.
His budget reflected 1.
Okay, that's what I'm
We
trying to
haven't
say.
gotten there yet,
Okay.
because there are a couple other steps that could be taken, we wanted him to look at.
Mhm.
Because the last time we added an officer, and we may have to add an officer.
I understand.
Because we may lose one. Who knows, but the last time it happened, the interviews didn't yield an officer until well into the spring, and then you've got setting up
Yes.
the academy and all the rest of that stuff. So you really don't have that officer fully involved for close to a year.
That's right.
So if our intention is to add an officer, and I think we will continue the discussion about it, 2022 may be the year when there's some money in the budget for academy, for instance, or money in the budget for starting the process.
What's the current status on the facility?
We'll have a number in December, because that was our projected date for getting a new figure on that. All of the money that was allocated at last year's town meeting, or this spring's town meeting, has been encumbered. The federal money lasts for 6 years. So we just need to know whether or not we have to ask for more money in this coming warrant article. If we do, how much is it going to be? I mean, my goal, although Guy may have a different goal, but my goal is to macro the budget so that we can take a look at the operating budget and the warrant articles combined and see how that changes year to year. And then I think we can probably keep it pretty flat. And we still have money in the undesignated fund balance to moderate the tax rate increase if there would be one.
Thank you.
Penny mentioned to me before we started the meeting, that at the end of last year, she had made a request, and I think we all pretty much were in agreement that it would be awfully nice if we could have some sort of a spreadsheet to show what everything costs by the department. It costs. In other words, fire department has got, items all over the map, different accounts. Police department does the same thing. It'd be awfully nice if we could have somebody develop a spreadsheet and say, okay, these are the building costs, these are the labor costs, these are the equipment costs for the fire department, so on and so forth. So we can just have an idea of what it's really costing us to run these
You want a
departments.
combined department cost.
So pull the building out of the government buildings account, and pull the insurances out of the insurance account.
Employee insurance
Yeah.
should be reflected. Any commercial insurance that is part of police or fire, that should be in their budget.
No, we're
No,
not gonna do that.
well,
Okay,
I
we're not
want to
gonna
know
do
the
that.
amount.
I don't want to do a spreadsheet that will tell you, okay, this is really the cost of running a fire department. That's fine. But we can't change the way the budget's constructed, because that all of a sudden involves DRA and all.
No, this is not the way the budget is constructed. This is just so that we will have a better
This is
idea
an overlay.
of what things are
So we
truly
have a better
costing.
handle on what the
But
real
I'm
cost
afraid
is.
what's gonna happen is that there's gonna be a lot of judgment calls.
Well, we had all agreed
Well,
and voted on this last
When you try
year.
to apportion the cost of insurance, it's gonna be hard to get it down to an exact figure for each department. I'm not sure we know.
Well, employee
You'll
insurance
get a
should be very
picture,
easy.
of some sort.
We can get pretty close, and actually, we can call Primex up and ask them what each building is being assessed for their property and liability. And it's informative, but I'm not sure it's not gonna change anything.
Exactly.
Well, whether it changes something is a possibility,
Yeah.
but I think the informative part of it is really important for us. We're working with a budget, and when you look at, say, fire,
Mhm.
you think it's going to be a 1.5, and it's really costing the town 2.3, or whatever the number is.
For the operating budget?
Yes,
Right. It's,
But then you look around for a reason, and you may find a
but,
reason.
yeah,
may
you
find
get
a
all
very
of
good
the,
reason.
the problem.
You may not
But
be
you
able to do
know what?
anything with it,
I think that if we have employee salaries on a line item, then all of the expenses for employee salaries, Social Security, Medicare, health insurance, all of that should be reflected in that budget. And since it's not, we requested last year that a spreadsheet be developed for us so we could
No,
see
I
that true
understand,
cost.
I understand, but here's what I'm trying to say. Suppose you have the information, okay? Then the metric that you're gonna reach for is, well, what does the fire department in the next town over cost? Or what does the fire department in the next town over per capita in the fire department cost? You're just gonna find explanations for it. You might find staff that has more seniority, they make a higher wage. on
But the
average,
wage is
other
already
type of
on
thing.
that, in there.
Pardon?
Wage is already in
Right.
the
But the
department
wages are
budget.
established.
Mhm.
I mean, take the fire department, for instance. That wage is established in conference with the other fire departments that are in the mutual aid society that they're in. I mean, just as an aside, the fire chief did come in looking for 2 stipends for 2 individuals to cover the night shift that we've never done before. People,
Mhm.
when a night call comes in, whoever goes, and whoever doesn't. So is there a need for that? He didn't establish a need to our satisfaction, but it did, I mean, we're looking at a cost there. Their firefighter pay, if you will, for going out and actually fighting fires,
Mhm.
is not a statutory wage or.
No, I understand
whatever.
that.
It's just a number that they come
Yeah.
up with. So it's a little difficult to, and we can do with the salaried employees pretty easily. just by asking.
It's overall, it's the building costs, you know, I mean,
Yeah,
what is a building real, what's the true building cost?
yeah, you have most of it. It's just
Well, it's
a
all
matter
over
of
the
how you,
place.
how you
We
look
have,
at it.
we have
Excel
200
spreadsheet.
items.
Yes, so
200
just,
items for the fire department to look at. It could probably be condensed down into 10 groups that include a lot of that same stuff, like generator maintenance. I mean, you can find that all over the place in there. Heating costs in all the different buildings, they're all spread out. Just try and coagulate some of that stuff.
Yeah, well, each of the departments has line items for their expenses, like heat, electricity.
Well, that's fine, but for us, if they could present us kind of a condensed
Yes.
version.
It's called Wonders of Excel.
it's a simple thing to do. They can put it on Excel.
All right.
You know, it would just make it a lot easier for us if we had major groups and subgroups, all.
I'm fine going through the exercise, I just don't know how it's gonna change anything.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna present a budget premised upon actual expenses and
So,
liabilities going
Well, here's-
forward.
and if I'm being offensive, I apologize. But don't you think it's important to know what the actual cost of a department is?
Absolutely.
Okay, so
But
then
it's
that's all we're
important.
looking for.
Okay. It's important for us as the managers of the town to know that.
Mhm.
Is it important for the budget committee to know it?
Mm.
Isn't
Probably not.
it
Because
important?
Ultimately, if we're looking at a budget, and
Mhm.
we can go back to the highway department budget for one, we're asking for that bottom line. You don't have the ability or the authority to zero out a line. You don't have the line out either.
I
You have-
understand, I'm not asking you to do
You have the
that.
ability to change that bottom line,
Mhm.
but the operating of all the other lines is in the purview of the selectmen. So if you zeroed out road striping, we'd probably still stripe roads, we'd just take the money from another line.
I understand that's what
So
you
what,
We're not trying to, we're not trying to micromanage.
No.
All we're trying to do is see where things are going. It makes decision-making a lot
I
easier.
think that information of this sort ought to be pulled together when you have an objective in mind. And I think that, you know, I have curiosity, I mean, I'm human, I would like to know what that kind of budget by department would show us. But I think before we launch on, I think we need to determine among ourselves, what are we going to actually do with that information?
why don't we do this?
And if
Pick a
there is no,
budget.
just a minute,
Oh, sorry.
and if there is no, you know, clear answer to that, then I would say that this is like a lower order thing that we should be doing. But if there's a clear need, if we're gonna do something with it, I'd like to know what that is.
Well, let me propose something. Pick a budget, one budget, any of them, and we'll break it all down.
Fire.
Fire? Okay.
Could you do police and
Fire, but,
No, I said one.
Well, I'm
but,
asking, I'm
you
negotiating.
have fire,
Yeah,
you have
Because-
fire and emergency management,
Yes.
which are
Yeah,
melded.
yeah, that's fine. And we'll put a spreadsheet together that will itemize what the actual costs that keep us safe, fire-wise, fire and rescue, and emergency management.
Right, that's a good place to start.
I'm happy to do that on one, and then take a look at that one, see if that information, for whatever reason, or makes your job easier. It makes it
I'm
more-
not looking for
makes
the
it more
information
informed.
to make my job easier. I'm looking for a clear understanding of what it costs to run that fire department. I understand that you are, the selectmen are the people who are in charge. And you may feel that it's not a budget committee, appropriate for a budget committee to look at that. But I would still like to see it then as a taxpayer.
Yeah, I don't think it's
I think
inappropriate for you to
that's
look
the
at
key.
it. I just don't want to color your decision-making.
I don't think it would
I'm
never
not
color
gonna
my
spend a lot of
decision-making.
meetings here.
I already have made some,
I think
Quite
the key
interesting
to the discussion is that the selectmen know what they need to know. The department heads know what they need to know. The budget committee needs to know something. But the townspeople would also like to know too, and they're the ones, they have no idea what they're.
No, they don't. They have no idea.
They have no
sometimes.
idea.
And most of the time, they have no idea how complicated it is.
Oh, I
You know,
understand,
it's-
I understand that too.
And we've had those discussions
But,
over and over.
but ultimately, it comes down to the job is to represent the townspeople and the taxpayers in their best interest. And if they have no idea, is that their best interest? I don't think that's not.
Aren't we talking about cost and benefit, and personnel to, to establish, the minute detail, for people, especially in the community? I mean, we sit here in the budget committee because we have an interest but I think if you take a look at your community, how many people do you think are really read over the annual report?
Compared to the number of people who come to the annual meeting.
Yeah, how many are, yeah.
Well, that's,
A
yes.
handful.
And they changed the date and time for that.
That's 400 people or 350 people out of 2,200. Again, I understand, the need for information, but having come from from a corporate background, the need to know minute detail as you kick it down to the levels to do it takes up time and energy of your employees. It takes up, and then most of that information in many cases sits on the side of somebody's desk that's never get read. And I think that has to be related in terms of what we need.
Well, that's why if we took one department, and certainly the most line items that we deal with, I think it's the fire department.
Give it a shot and see what happens.
Yeah, just do that one, and then we
You might be
decide,
pleasantly surprised.
You never know,
then we'll find out, okay?
I worry about what's gonna happen if you're unpleasantly surprised.
Nothing.
I
I'll
hope
tell you,
so.
I'm a
What can you
pretty
do?
even-handed guy, pretty calm most of the time, but nothing's gonna happen. So all the information's good, and I think it's important that everybody becomes informed.
But
But our job is to take the gross budget and all the little pieces and make sure that everything works and that we're not paying $20 a thousand for taxes.
You know, in the corporate world, the top number of a budget's handed to a department, and
I
they have to live with
understand.
it.
I
That's what we, that's
have done budgeting
Here we have
for a
something.
multi-million-dollar company. So-
Here we build up the budget based on need, and it's reviewed by the selectmen and vetted, and then it's reviewed by us.
And that's why we have
And
elections.
I think that it's a very reasonable approach. Now, I'm not denying that I'm curious. I'm
So
simply curious. But I think we want to watch
One
out that we
department,
don't
one
try
department
to
can have
turn the
some
model that
ability of
we
doing
use on its head and go in a different direction. That's what I'm trying to say.
The information to the curious is available if you want to extract.
And it's there. It's there.
Yeah, and I can appreciate not wanting to create the budget. I don't mind doing one budget,
Okay.
and we'll see.
We'll see what else we'll do. Okay.
And that's a good one to do, because that's probably the one that's got the most chemicals out there, and everybody just to find.
Yeah, I mean, a useful, not to belabor this, but a useful tool for that exercise would be presenting it to someone who might one day, or hopefully soon, want to become a selectman. They can look at it and get trained by it. Because ultimately, that job continues, whether or not I'm here, or Bill's here, or Guy's here.
And with that in mind, I would entertain a move to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and second, those in favor, aye? Thank you very much.
Back into it.
Look at my